What's up everybody, welcome to episode 4. Today we're just back here at Parq, Vancouver. Stepping it up today, I'm going to play some 2-5 up in the ante. Playing a bit bigger stakes here. This game actually plays kind of like 5-10. It's 500 min, 1500 max. We're going to jump in for $1,000. We have a reload of another $1,000 with us as well, so let's get into it. So kicking off the first session at 2-5 for the vlog. It's a couple of legends in the game. Looks like it's going to be an action table. Plenty of fun to be had. So we kick on with the first hand. There's a $10 button straddle. Under the gun 1 opens to 40. We look down at ace-5 of clubs in the cutoff. Clear 3-bet here with this hand as a bluff. Functions really nice as a 3-bet. The suited wheel aces. Ace-5 is perfect. So we go ahead and bump it up to 120 and under the gun 1 calls. Flop comes down 8-7-4 rainbow. There's 257 in the middle. I think this is a board that definitely favours his calling range more than my 3-betting range. So for these reasons I decide on a check. I don't hate maybe a small bet, but I think I prefer checking. Maybe a small bet could be fine here as well, as we'd probably be betting some of our overpairs, although we'd want to check some of them back a certain percentage of the time. Anyways, we check it back and the turn comes to 2 of hearts, bringing in a backdoor flush draw. Pot still 2-5-7, under the gun 1 bets out $90. He's betting just over 1/3 pot. It's a pretty small bet. Think we have to call here. Our ace can still be good if we're behind. We do have a good shot to a straight. It's a board he knows that is going to favour him, so I'd expect him to start firing off with Queen Jack suited, King Queen suited, 10 Jack suited, hands that peel that he wants to start bluffing now. Think when he starts bluffing he's probably going to want to choose a small size. He's not going to want to just bet pot with like an 8 here, because we can still have some overpairs that we check back. So I think a sizing is going to be good with some value and some bluffs. We peel anyways with our ace high. River comes now another 7, pairing the second card. Pot is now 4-3-7 and he bets 135. It's a small bet here again. Looks pretty value-y, but I think it's still early in the game. The players are better than the 1-3 games. I think they're capable of choosing this small size as a bluff. Like, I think if he has like Queen Jack suited here, if he just bombs, like, he can't credibly have too many 7s. I don't think he'd bet that many 7s on the turn. So I think a small sizing is what's going to work for him. It looks like I have ace high, so he's trying to take me off it. I decide to look him up and he has King 8 of diamonds for top pair. Pretty loose call from him pre-flop, but a nice bit of tin value on the river. So in this hand, under the gun opens to 20. We look down at American Airlines in the small blind. We 3-bet it up to $80 with a plan to take him on a one-way flight straight to Value Town. He peels, we go heads up to a flop. There's 1-6-5 in the middle, comes down Jack 9-3 with 2 spades. There's a bunch of draws out here on this board. It's flush draws, some straight draws. We see bet $60, go with a small size here, which I think we'd be betting with a lot of our range. I also think on a board like this we could size up to like 100, 110, as he's going to have a lot of draws that want to come along. So I think either is fine, but we settle on $60. Turn now comes an offsuit 4. There's 285 in the middle. We size up now. We're looking to get some value from some Jack X, some draws. So we bet 175 and he calls pretty quickly. Usually it's a sign of someone having a draw when they call pretty quick, because if they do have a strong hand, they have to debate whether they want to raise now or call and raise on the river. So given the fact that he calls pretty quickly, I think he can have a lot of draws here. River now comes an offsuit 2. There's 635 in the middle. We have a decision to make here. It's, do we want to keep betting for value, or do we want to check and let him bluff with his missed draws? If we bet and he just has a missed flush draw or a missed straight draw, he's probably just going to fold. So the decision comes down to what we think he has and what do we think is going to be better, especially with our hand. I think having pocket aces, we block ace jack pretty heavy, which is going to be one of his best one pair hands. So I don't think he's going to call a big bet with like king jack, jack 10, queen 10. Don't think he's going to hero with these hands, so we choose the latter option. We're going to check call, let him bluff off with some missed draws. We check, he thinks for a couple of seconds and eventually checks it back. We turn over our hand, aces are good, and we scoop a $635 pot. So this hand here, the hijack opens to 25, the button flats. We look down at king jack off and the small. Usually here I'd play a 3-bet strategy out the small blind generally, but I think there's a recreational player in the big blind who likes to drive a lot of action, so even though this is a prime candidate to squeeze over the raise on the call, I think in this session I was playing a lot more flats in the small blind just to keep this player in. He's pretty good action, plays some big pots, so we flat and he comes along. We go 4 ways to a flop, comes down king 6-10 with 2 clubs, there's 100 in the middle, checks all the way around to the button and he fires $75. We call and the hijack comes along too. Turn comes to 6 of hearts, 3 of us still left in the pot, there's 325 in the middle and it checks to the button again. He bets $180. With decision here, I don't think we can fold just yet given the fact there's some straight draws out there, there's some flush draws. So I think we have to peel again. We peel and the hijack also peels. So we're 3 ways to a river. Once the hijack peels, I think we're feeling not very confident with a hand anymore. Probably hoping to maybe hit a jack or spike a king for a full house. So when the river comes to the ace of hearts, we're pretty much done with the hand. There's 865 in the middle. Bunch of draws get there. We might not have the best king anyway, so we check, basically giving up. Hijack checks and the button rips 1400 into a pot of 800. We've an easy fold here. Goes back to the hijack. He's a big decision. He has more than 1400. So the button is basically bet nearly 2x pot on the river. Queen jack gets there. There's some full houses out there. So I'm not sure what the hijack has. He must have something decent if he's stuck around this long and he's in the tank. He tanks for what seems like eternity before eventually making the call. Button shows him 6s for quads. It's clearly good. He has the nuts and hijack mucks his cards. I don't know what he had, but he could definitely have some full houses. He could have rivered a straight. I think he would have had something pretty strong to call the river, so it seemed like a pretty sick cooler. And the button scoops an absolutely monstrous pot, nearly 4k. Straddles on here, and we open king queen of hearts to 30 under the gun. Under the gun won 1 seat over. He's a pretty good reg, one of the better players in the game. 3 bets to 100. Folds back to us, and we have a pretty easy call here. I think this guy is definitely capable of having bluffs here, so I don't think we're going to fold king queen suited to 1 3 bet. So we peel, heads up to the flop. It's 217 in the middle. It comes king 8-5 with 2 clubs and 1 heart. We've top pair here, backdoor flush draw. Pretty decent flop for our hand. We check and he bets $75. I'd expect him to continue with a small bet with a lot of his range that he 3 bets here. So we just have an easy call. Turn comes an offsuit 3. There's now 3, 6, 7 in the middle. I check and he checks it back. Now we're very confident that we have the best hand. Barring a disaster card, we're going to go for some value here on the river. We get an offsuit 9 on the river. We decide to go with a bet of $200 and he insta-mucks and we take this one down. So in the game now, we've decided to play the straddle game. One of the action players suggests we should make the 10 straddle mandatory. If you miss your straddle before your second card is dealt, you pay 25 to the kiddie. When it hits 75, we get a round of drinks for the table. So the game has basically grown from a 2-5 game into a 5-10 game. The stakes have doubled, meaning the pots are going to be bigger. Straight away, that's what happens. We get into a pretty massive pot. We open king queen off under the gun to 30 and get 3 callers. Flop comes down 4, 8 king, all clubs. or 4 ways to the flop, and there's 120 in the middle. Small blind leads out for 80. It's unusual to see players lead into 4 players. Straight away there's some alarm bells going off. Figure he probably has a flush or the ace of clubs. There's a lot of the hands we'd see a player do this with where he just leads. Anyways, we have top pair and the second no flush draw, so we're not going anywhere just yet. We call and the turn comes to king of hearts. We've now upgraded our hand to trips. Still have the second no flush draw, and the small blind decides to now lead out again for $240. Pretty big bet, close to pot. Don't think we can do much else here but call. We have trips, a pretty strong hand. We have the queen of clubs as a backup to the second nut flush. We don't know whether we want to hit it or not yet, because we might still have the best hand if he just has the naked ace of clubs. So given that we have such a strong hand here, I don't think we can do much else but call. I don't think raising really accomplishes anything. If he does have just the ace of clubs, we want to let him just bluff it off. So I think peeling here is probably going to be the best decision. We call the 240 and we go heads up to the turn. Turn comes an offsuit 6, changes nothing. The 760 in the middle, and he rips his entire stack of $883 to send us deep into the tank. Pretty gross spot here. We've trips, but there is a flush out there. We do have the queen of clubs blocker. Generally, I think if this was 1-3, I would just fold. People just always have a flush. Obviously, full houses are possible. Pocket 4s and pocket 8s. You can't have kings because you would have 3-bet pre, and there's only one combo that left. I think he's more likely to probably check a set and just call rather than lead. In my opinion, maybe he doesn't, but I think he would definitely check call. So it comes down to now, did he flop a flush or does he have the ace of clubs? And it also comes down to, do we think he's capable of bluffing? I think the players in this game have shown that they definitely are capable of bluffing. So I think we can fold a lot of kings here comfortably, but I don't think we want to fold all our kings. So now it comes down to which are the best kings to call. Well, if we have ace king here with the ace of clubs, although it looks on paper that it's probably one of the best calls because we blocked enough flush, when we have the ace of clubs, we also block his main bluffing card. So if we had the ace of clubs, I think it's an easy fold because now he just has no bluffs and he's just going to have pure value. So I think we'd fold that hand. I think also we can fold all our hands that are king queen and do not contain a club, because then it's just way more likely he has a flush, and if we just call all our king queens, we're probably calling way too much. So we want to be folding a lot of our kings, but we want to still have a small amount to call with. So looking at this hand here, we've the queen of clubs. We block the second nut flush draw. So I think having this card here makes this probably one of the combos we want to call. We're not loving the situation. He may never be bluffing. We can't be 100% on that, but we have to assume that some small percentage of the time he probably will be bluffing. So after a really long time in the tank, we come to the decision that this is one of the combos we want to call. We're not loving the spot. It's pretty gross, but I think we just need to flick it in and hope that he was bluffing. So we flick in the call, get shown the bad news. He's A7 of clubs for the flop, no flush. Pretty sick run out for us, having the club, making trips. Pretty gross, and we lose an absolutely monster pot. That's nearly 2.8k. So not good. We're going to reload for another 1,000 and attack again. Since the 10 became mandatory, there's been some pretty monster pots at the table, and this one's going to be no different. Falls round to the button, who makes it 35, and we look down at 6-7 of diamonds in the big blind. Usually I would choose a 3-bet here out of position, but for the reason we gave earlier, we're happy to call, let the action player come along. So we just peel. Action player decides that's too cheap for me to play and bangs it up to 140 to go. Button calls, and we're going to come along as well for the ride. Think this is a nice hand, especially multi-way. It's going to play pretty nice on certain flops. It's going to be easy to play, and if we hit our hand, we can win some pretty big pots. So 140 will come along and see a flop. 3 ways to the flop comes down Jack 10-2 with 2 diamonds. It's 420 in the middle. We flop a flush draw, and the original raiser leads out for 180. Button calls, and we have a pretty easy call here. If we hit our flush, we'll probably hit a monster pot. If we don't, we have a pretty easy check fold. Feeling lucky, we toss the chips in and go off to a turn. We hit the gin turn, it comes to queen of diamonds. We now make our flush. He bets 450. We're loving life at this stage. He has a lot of strong hands here. Ace king now makes a straight. He has all the sets, 10s, jacks, queens that raise are all going to have sets. So when it gets back to us after button folds, I think we can do nothing else here but stick it in. We've only 883 total left in our stack. His bet is 420. Don't think he's ever bluffing. Don't think he's ever folding for such little more. There's so many good hands here. He has us beat the odd time with some ace king of diamonds, some ace x of diamonds, but that's very, very rare. We're very happy to get the money in, and he pretty much snap calls us. River comes to 7 of hearts, and we turn our flush over. He mucks, says you're good, and we win a pretty monster pot of 2.6k to get us back out from the dirt. We were running rough. We were losing money, but one pot, especially when it's 2, 5, 10, can turn everything around. We're back in the game. We're hungry and we're looking for some more pots to win. We open it up here under the gun to $30 with Jack 9 of spades. Falls around to the button who calls. Everyone else folds. We go heads up to a flop. Comes down 10-7 deuce with 2 clubs and 1 spade. So we flop a good shot and a backdoor flush draw. Generally, we are going to have the range advantage here, as when we open and don't get 3-bet, we're going to have a lot more of the overpairs. If button had aces, kings, queens, he's going to 3-bet. So with a hand, I see no reason of continuing to bluff here. I bet $40 and he calls. Turn comes a deuce, pairing the bottom card. I don't expect him to have any deuces, although I'm never going to have any either. But I think, given that we still only have jack high, we have some outs, we can put a lot of pressure on hands like 8, 6s, 5s. I think we want to go with a big bet here. We settle on a size of $100. Looking back at it, I think we can go even bigger and start to incorporate some overbets here on this turn to really maximise the pressure we put on these hands. If we bet like 185, we're putting so much pressure on all them middle and pairs. Even a hand like jack 10 is going to start having some trouble calling, knowing that a big river bomb is coming. But we end up settling on $100 and he folds pretty quickly. This has been a roller coaster ride of a session so far. We've won a lot of big pots, lost a lot of big pots, and this one's going to be no different. An old gentleman under the gun limps and I make a 20 in the cut-off with pocket 8s. The button calls and the old man under the gun calls. We go 3 ways to a flop. Comes king 8-4 with 2 diamonds. We flop middle set, very strong hand here, and under the gun decides to lead out for 50. It's no better feeling when you have flopped the set and someone starts betting into you. I call to let the button come along, but unfortunately he folds and gets out of the way. Turn comes a 6, there's now 160 in the middle, and under the gun bets $100. Now I want to start raising, get some value. I don't think this guy is going to fold after he goes bet. I raise it on up to 300 and he insta shoves $800 and I snap. He turns over king jack and I scoop an almost $1,700 pot. In this hand here, under the gun opens to 15. The cut-off calls and we look down at one of the stronger hands on poker, ace queen suited. We're not going to let them in for this cheap, so we bang it up to $75. Under the gun wants to play, so he comes along, but the cut-off runs off scared. We go heads up to a flop, comes down a good one, ace king 2 rainbow. We flop top pair second kicker. We have a massive range and nut advantage on this board when under the gun does flat. He still should have some pretty strong hands. He should have a tight range when he raises under the gun and calls a 3-bet. We're still going to have more of the aces, kings. So when we have a big range advantage, we're going to lead with 100% of our hands and use a small sizing. We decide on $50 we'll do it. He calls and we go heads up to the turn. It's another offsuit deuce. Board now reads ace king 2-2. Now we want to step up the bets. We're trying to bet big, get some stacks in on the river. So we size up to 200, hoping he has ace jack, ace 10 suited, some king queens that don't believe us. He obliges and sticks in the call. There's now 672 in the middle and it comes in offsuit 8. Generally I think we'd want to go for some more value here. but something strange in the hand. I just had an off feeling when I was looking at him. Usually I would bet like $500 on the river here as a value bet, but something just made me think that if I bet this guy was going to raise, even though I wouldn't expect him to have many deuces, there still is a combo of ace deuce suited out there. And I just got this weird vibe off him, this weird feeling, and I can't explain it. I don't know why, but it just made me want to check. I check and he bet $400. We're clearly never folding with this hand. We look him up and he is ace king that he didn't 4-bet pre. I think under the gun by small blinds, it's fine for him just to call, but it's weird. If I bet, he shoves and now we're in the blender. So we probably got away with losing the least amount we could that pot. For the final hand of this vlog, middle position opens at 25, cut off calls. We look down at ace king off in the small blind. We squeeze it up to 125 and just the cut off calls. Flop comes down ace 7-8 with 2 hearts. There's 283 in the middle. I think we'll go a bit bigger than the usual 1/3 on these kind of boards when you 3-bet, because the board is in some way connected and has the flush draw. So we bet 125 and he calls pretty quickly. Turn comes an offsuit 5. 6-9 now gets there, but it's a very unlikely hand. So I think we want to keep betting for value. Yeah, sometimes he might have 2 pairs, some ace-7, ace-8 suited, 7-8 suited, but I don't see any reason to stop betting for value here. There's a lot of worse aces, there's a lot of draws, flush draws, gut shots. So I think we want to keep betting, and we choose a size of $300. He calls pretty quickly again. As I was saying earlier, this usually leads me to believe that he has some type of draw. Players, when they have a pretty strong hand, do have to think for a second, do they want to raise or do they want to call? So bearing in mind that he does this, when the river falls a king, we make 2 pair. We have a decision here. There's over 1100 in the middle. He's about the same behind in the stack. So the question comes down to, do we want to go all in? Do we want to bet big? Or do we want to check and try let him bluff? Given that we have ace king and the top 2 cards are an ace and a king, it's hard for him to have one of these hands. So I think checking and letting him bluff is probably the best play, because if he has 2 pair, he's going to bet those anyways, and we get to jam and he might call off. So we don't miss any value, I don't think, by checking. We might miss some value from a hand like ace 10 suited, something like this, because he didn't 3-bet pre. He called the initial raise and then called the 3-bet, so you can't have too strong of a hand here. So I think checking to let him bluff off is probably the best play. We're still going to stack his 2 pairs if he's 7-8, if he's ace-7, ace-8. So we check and he tanks for what seems like a good while. So we're hoping that once he tanks for this long, we're kind of hoping that he sticks a lot of money in. Like, we definitely have the best hand. I don't expect him to have a set that often. So we're sitting there hoping he sticks the money in, but eventually he finds the check back. We turn over a hand. It's clearly going to be good. And he says he had a missed flush draw and he was very close to sticking the whole stack in. Unfortunately for us, he didn't. That would have been a nice extra grand into our stack, but he made the right play on giving up, although I'm surprised he didn't blast off, as I'd seen him blast off in a few spots in the game. Maybe he just had enough of punting, decided to just wave the white flag, and we win an $1,100 pot to finish the vlog. So that wraps up episode 4. Hope you enjoyed it. First venture up to 2.5 for the vlog. We were in for $2,000, out for $1,865 for a loss of 135 bucks. Not really anything in the game of this size. The 10 straddle was on for a lot of the game, but definitely thought the action was pretty good in the game. Some good regs, but we can definitely compete up there. So we're going to stick there for the upcoming vlogs. Try go up even higher stakes in the coming months. So if you enjoyed it, please give it a like, give it a subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.